In the case of an active listing where you know that more than one person is going to be bidding on it because you've gone to the open house and there are 65 people there, do you think it's wise to do it that way?
So if you're the listing agent,
yes.
you would say to the other agents, I only want to see offers on purchase and sale agreements.
But I know down in the southern part of Rhode Island, let's say Newport, for example, they will not, I've been told by agents down there that they will not accept an offer form. It has to be on a purchase and sale. Can they say that?
They can? Yes, they can. Yes, they can say that. Our panel says yes, they can say that.
And now, why can they say that? Because of their offer. I mean, if they would say my seller will only look at a purchase and sales, but they're saying their office policy is that they only deal on a purchase and sales, and that's okay.
Because they've had too many deals fall through off of offer forms, so that they're saying that that's the only way they're going to bind it.
Okay.
Since there's no time of the essence clause in the Rhode Island P&S, if you've got a seller and you've got a buyer that doesn't come through with on the closing date or various clauses that we've been speaking about here, how long can they realistically tie the property up? From what you're saying here, you could tie the property up indefinitely, since there is no time of the essence clause.
The case law says you have to act in a reasonable time.
And I guess that's subject to interpretation. What's reasonable, right?
Right. That's why that always has everybody.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And the court will look at too, is that party looking to still move forward? Are they making steps, or are they just wasting time? Have they done their inspections? Have they gotten their appraisal? Have they made plans? Are they actually trying to still purchase the property?
We get a lot of requests these days as our population is getting older to represent estates. And of course, when the heirs get the property, they don't have any idea what condition their mom or father kept this house in. I think that the law probably says that we don't have to have a disclosure for an estate property. Is that correct?
It's the fiduciary of the estate, so that would be the administrator and the executor of the estate.
Okay, so what's your advice to us to keep us out of trouble if we are getting a listing that does not have a living, breathing owner? Should we get an inspection done? Or should we suggest that an inspection is done by the trustee so that they have something to represent, or should we just say what the heck?
I think maybe, I think if it was me, I would add a provision into the contract just saying that this is a transfer from an estate fiduciary and exempt under the law.
Let's talk a little bit about ghosts and other things that can negatively impact the value of a home. We have represented homes that had murders, that had ghosts, that had other things that could negatively impact the value of a home. And there's a huge difference between somebody being attacked in the home and violently murdered and somebody dying in their bed. Every house has a history, but otherwise build a new house if you want to make your own history starting at the beginning. We represented the Zaki house, which was on Prospect Street, and Dr. Zaki was murdered in it, and I was really caught on what we should do, and Libby and I talked about it. It wasn't my listing, it was Michelle Hurd. But it was sort of like, oh my God, I hope nobody from New York buys this. I hope it's some local resident who knows the story, because if we can't say anything because it would potentially impact the value of it, then, how do we do it? The nice thing about Googling is that you can just put the address in and all kinds of information comes up.
Statute on confidential information for real estate disclosures, it does include psychological impact property. So I would think if you're the seller told you, representing the seller, and they tell you not to disclose it, I don't think you can unless it falls under the exception that it's a matter of general knowledge or part of the public record.
Can you talk a little bit about the protection that is now given to tenants when a building is condoed?
Unless it's changed, if they are, you have to give them, I think, 120 days notice, and the first option to purchase. If they're over 50 or they've been there for more than 10 years, you have to give them, I don't remember the exact time frame, but they need longer, and then you might actually have to pay for their money expenses.
It used to be that you could just condo it and add the parts up and sell the building. So now they have 60 days to get back to us. Now, let's say the price that we gave to this person for this unit was $400,000, and they say no to it, and then we get it, we market it, and the best offer we get is $350,000. Now I'm told we have to go back to them, is that correct?
Within 180 days from that, notice to them you can't sell it for less than you offered it.
So tell them that it may be true that the parts are worth more than the whole, but don't bother. No, I'm only kidding. But I mean, it's a long process, and it can delay and delay and delay. And in the meantime, the tenant can move out, or and the seller doesn't get the income. And I mean, I think it's not easy anymore to do this. What happens if owners discover that there's a title defect after a closing? How about boundaries? Don't they have problems sometimes? I mean, here's a case that we had many years ago, which we ultimately got settled, but there was a fence around the property. We're not a survey state, so nobody surveyed the property. The agent assumed that the fence was the border, and then they wanted to put a swimming pool in, and then they had it surveyed. And then we found out it was like, 1,000 square feet smaller than they thought, and then I got the call. So what do we do? What do you advise us to do about those kinds of issues?
That particular issue would not be covered by title insurance unless they actually had a survey done, because every owner's policy has a standard exception for anything that might be shown by a survey, and that would include any boundary disputes, encroachments either by your property or onto your property, easements or rights of way that didn't show up in the land records, but maybe you can see them on the ground when you actually go out to do the survey.
The survey deletion at closing is signed. You're exempting title insurance?
The survey deletion affidavit that the seller signs or the owner signs that are refi, that's for the lender policy, so the loan policy does not have that exception, but the owner's policy pretty much always does.
Is it reasonable for brokers to ask a seller when they're listing a property if there are any liens on it, on the property that they know of? Because that's not something I normally ask, but that's probably a reasonable question. Yeah.
Talking about taking a listing that becomes a short sale.
Yes.
Do your MLS requirements make you put something in your notes about it's going to be a short sale?
Yes. Now you have to. Yes. No, we've had to get braver about all kinds of things that I used to sort of think of as really personal. I think they're not so personal anymore.